What's up, chess friends? How are you guys doing? Hope everything is fine. This is Spanish Grandmaster Pepe Cuenca, and I welcome you to this second video where we talk about the Netflix series. Yes, the Queen's Gambit. A very interesting series, and before this, none of our friends used to ask us, "Hi, yeah, Pepe, how was this tournament? How did you find that place where you played that tournament? How was this game? Or is it true that chess people do like this or like that?" No, none of them didn't care about our miserable lives. But after this series, whenever I go to some dinner with my friends, they ask me like, "Oh, Pepe, the other day I just saw a very interesting series and it reminds me to you. Is it true that chess people do like this or like that? And chess is so interesting. I want you to teach me something." Now, besides joke, it's really good that everybody's talking about chess, and it's actually the best chess production I've ever seen, this Queen's Gambit series. So, what are we gonna do today? Well, I'm gonna show you a game that happened in the second episode between the main character Elizabeth Harmon and Harry Beltik, his main opponent in the Kentucky State Championship. So, let's focus on chess and try to have fun with this fantastic game. As usual, this game corresponds to a real game, and I'm gonna tell you the name of the players after this analysis. So E4 from Elizabeth Harmon, C6 from Harry Beltik, the Caro-Kann variation, which is one of the most solid approaches nowadays with the black pieces against E4. Knight F3. As you guys saw in the previous game, D4 is the main line, but Knight F3 is a really interesting line as well. D5, Knight C3, the two knights variation. In Chess24, there is a fantastic video series about this line from Hammer, the Norwegian Grandmaster. I actually employed this line myself, his ideas, in the Spanish National Championship in teams, like a couple of weeks ago against the ex-world champion Stefanova. And this line is very interesting too. So here, black has several options. Bishop G4, as Harry Beltik played, which is the most solid line. And you can also play Knight F6. And after E5, Knight E4, this is one of the most complicated lines in the Caro-Kann. You go Knight E2, for example, Queen B6, D4, E6, Knight G3, C5, Bishop D3, Knight takes E3, and now Mr. Hammer is recommending F takes G3. Which could look like a very unusual move, because we always say pawns towards the center, but now White's idea is to sacrifice this pawn on D4, and then in return you get a lot of counterplay on the F file, which is completely open now, right? Okay, so after Knight C3, Bishop G4, and Black's idea after H3 is just to give up the bishop on F3. And now after E6, we see that this bishop is actually better out of the board than on C8, right? Because, you know, with all these pawns in the light squares, this bishop is basically doing nothing. So White has the bishop pair, but it's not going to be easy to open the position. Black has a fantastic solid center with these three pawns on C6, D5, and E6. And here Elizabeth Harmon goes for G3, going for the fianchetto. Main line as well is D4. This is actually where I played against Stefanova. You know, line continues, Knight F6, C takes D5, C takes D5, and Bishop D3. And this is another story. But G3 is a very natural move. I mean, here it's a very flexible setup where you can actually develop pieces in several interesting ways, right? So Black says, you know what, you're going for the fianchetto, so I'm gonna go for it as well. So G6 is played by Harry Beltik. So Knight F6, Bishop E7, all of them are also playable. G6, Bishop G2, Bishop G7, short castles, Knight D7, and here Queen E2. The Queen already did her job, right? Going to F3, capturing that piece, and now the Queen says, you know, I'm going back, and then this pawn can be pushed in the future, right? So now D4, probably Knight E7 is a little bit more flexible to see how White continues development, because now with this D4 move, you know, it's true that now you win a tempo, but now you are not putting pressure on E4 anymore. So now Knight B1, this knight is gonna be well allocated in C4 later, for example, with moves like D3 or even Knight A3 followed by Knight C4. So actually the knight has a route, so it's not the end of the wall. And Black plays E5, controlling D4, protecting D4, but now we have an interesting breakpoint on F4. White continues with d3 and knight e7 from Harry Beltik. Now white strikes in the center, sending Facundo to the action, f4 and queen c7. I really like this move because this is a very flexible move. Now black is hiding where he wants to go with the king. He can go long castle or short castle. And if we now play f5, maybe it's not the best idea, because now black didn't compromise the situation of his king, and now black can actually go, for example, after f6 long castle, right? And it doesn't make so much sense to start a pawn storm on the king side if there is no black king there, right? So this is why I really like queen c7. And now I also like very much Elizabeth Harmon move, which is a4, another flexible move, just waiting for black, you know. If black now goes long castle, you know, there is some danger as well in this position on the queen side. So basically with this a4, we are actually inviting black to go to the king side. And this is what actually Harry Beltik did. He went for short castle in this position, and now Elizabeth Harmon closes with f5, which makes a lot of sense right now, because now a pawn storm is much more useful in this situation on the king side where there is a king. So black stops Facundo by playing f6, and now knight d2. This knight can come to c4 and also to the f3 square, as it happened in the game. As you can see, this bishop is basically doing nothing. All these pawns stop his action on this main diagonal, so that's why this move is very, very natural. Bishop h6. Now Harry Beltik wants to trade this bishop for the bishop on c1, and this makes a lot of sense because the bishop is quite passive on g7, right? Now white improves a little bit the situation of the king h2, and now black plays king h8, improving as well a little bit the situation of the king. G takes f5 was very, very interesting, because after e takes f5, looks like black opened this file, but as you can see now, the d5 square is actually available for this knight. And for d5, you are aiming to go to e3. For example, if white goes knight e4, you can just trade on c1 and then put a monster on e3. And if white goes knight c4, just covering e3, you can actually trade and play king h8, and then in the future you're gonna enjoy some pressure in the g file. And it's not gonna be easy for white to play g4, because whenever white plays g4, you're not only weakening this diagonal but also the f4 square that could be used for this knight on d5. It's never easy to trade this knight on d5 to take this knight on d5, because after c takes d5, you know, we gain a lot of control on the central squares, and also we're enjoying fantastic pressure on the c file. So probably g takes f5 was a little bit more interesting, but as I told you, king h8 from Harry Beltik. Now f takes e6 from Elizabeth, h takes, and knight f3. Now the knight is coming to h4, where actually put some pressure on g6. So bishop takes c1, rook takes c1, and knight c5, attacking the a4 pawn, and here we have several options. So I'm gonna suggest you to pause the video and then try to think about the best move in this position. And we have two possibilities of protecting this pawn. b3, which looks not so good, because we will love to strike in the center with moves like c3 at some point, or rook a1. But none of them happened in the game. Actually, Elizabeth Harmon played c3. And then we have to understand this move slowly. All right, what happens if black just takes on a4? Well, we just capture on d4, and then a central pawn is actually more important than the a pawn. So knight a4 is not a very good move. But then some of you at home could be saying, come on, Pepe, stupid Spanish guy, why don't you take on c3 and then to take on a4? That actually makes a lot of sense. But after b takes c3, white sacrifices the pawn, but in returns he gets a lot of action in the center, right, with the move d4. This knight is completely misplaced, and now there are some tactical problems for black. For example, if black plays knight b6, trying to bring this knight back to the action, now d takes e5, f takes e5, and knight g5. And look at how black has so many holes in this position. The knight can come to e6, to f7. We can also bring this queen to the party by a g4, h4, and h7. So basically, this is a really tough position for black. And according to the engines, this is just completely lost and completely hopeless for black. Alright, so after c3, black plays knight b3, which makes a lot of sense, because now it wins a tempo, it controls d4, and now black plays rook a to d8. And now, you know, if we take on d4, after knight takes, rook takes, this is clearly better for black. Black enjoys, well, I don't know if clearly better, but at least easier to play from the practical point of view, because black enjoys a fantastic pressure on this backward pawn on d3, right? Also, a4 is under attack. So this is why we cannot take on d4, and Elizabeth Harmon changed targets by playing knight h4. Now her idea, is just to put pressure on g6. Also, this queen can come to g4, and if this queen arrives to g4, then g6 is gonna suffer. So this is why Harry Beltik went for queen c8, just covering g4, right? And also, this queen can come to e6. For example, if we now play queen c2, attacking this knight, of course, we are hoping this knight goes back to c5, and then c takes e4 just wins the game. But black's idea with this queen on c8 is not only covering g4, but also coming to e6, where it actually protects the knight on b3. So this is why Elizabeth went for bishop f3. Her idea is just to go bishop g4, you know, sending this queen to other diagonal, and then queen c2. For example, if black does nothing, let's say something like a6, which is a very stupid move, right? We play bishop g4, now we send the queen to other square, and now queen c2 is actually completely winning. Because if black knight goes to c5, c takes e4 just wins a pawn, and if black goes queen b6, we have some tactics that we can use in this position. And in this case, a5 is just completely winning. Why? Because if white takes with the queen, we just grab this little monster here. If black takes with the knight, there is b4 trapping the knight. And if black goes queen b5, we can use this fantastic diagonal for the bishop. Bishop e6, after knight c5, bishop c4, and then after queen a5, b4 with a fork, and white wins the game. So after bishop f3, the best move according to the engines was c5. The idea is not only to create counterplay with c4, but after bishop g4 also, black wants to play queen c6. And from c6, you're actually putting pressure on a4, and this is a very complicated position. Instead, Harry Beltik went for queen e6, a very natural move to the human eye, because after bishop g4, he wants to maintain the queen on this diagonal, just protecting this important knight on b3. So bishop g4, and now queen f7. There's a question that arises here. Why not to play f5? Well, it doesn't work because of tactical reasons. Again, e takes f5, g takes f5, and boom, ba-boom, bishop takes f5. And now the queen is coming to h5, so basically after knight f5, queen h5, if black goes king g8 or king g7, you just take on f5. If black covers with knight h6, then there is a fork on g6, just winning the game. So knight takes, and then queen g5, and then black cannot hold in this position. So this is why after bishop g4, Harry Beltik went for queen f7, and now knight f3 from Elizabeth Harmon, which is attacking e5. Actually, knight e5 is actually winning. So this is why now black has to retreat the queen to g8. So there is no knight e5. Now white keeps putting pressure with this move h4. In some positions, white wants to go h5 to ruin black pawn structure on the queen side. King g7 from Harry Beltik, and rook f2 from Elizabeth Harmon. Elizabeth wants to double rook on the f file and then put some more pressure on the f6 square. So here I'm gonna suggest you to think about the position, and then after telling you that f6 is a weak square where we can actually put some pressure, what will you play here with the black pieces? Well, rook d6. This is what Harry Beltik played, overprotecting the f6 pawn. And this is actually a big mistake. We'll try to understand why in a second. But the best move here was c5. And after rook d2, f1, c4, and then this is a big mess. D takes e4, d takes e3, and knight c5. Black has managed to ruin white pawn structure on the queen side, and then black has a lot of hopes in this position. I mean, it's very messy, it's very unbalanced. Anything can happen here. But instead, Harry Beltik went for rook d6. Why is this move so bad? I mean, it looks natural, yes, protecting f6. The thing is, after rook d to f1, now we are actually threatening to take on e5. And black has nothing better than to go back with the rook to d8 to protect f8. I mean, if black does something stupid like a6, knight e5 just wins, because black can't take on e5 because of rook f8. Probably some of you at home could be saying, come on, Pepe, don't tell me stupid things. Stupid Spanish guy. Rook f to d8. Now, you know, there's no knight e5. That's true. But the thing is that now after c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, this rook has so many tasks. This rook has to protect f6 and therefore can take on d4. And after pawn takes d4, then we push the beast, this pawn to e5, and actually we open the position up and black is completely lost. So this is why black had to go back with rook d to d8, and now Elizabeth plays queen c2, putting some pressure on the b3 knight, b6 and h5, finally trying to open some lines on the king side. So black continues with c5, h takes c6, d takes c3, b takes c3 and c4 from Harry Beltik. Well, we have to say that after knight g6, that could look like the most natural move in this position, just regaining the pawn. Well, white can play knight h4, and now black is in real trouble. You have to take in account that this queen is, you know, this queen has to protect this knight on b3 all the time. And we are just jumping to f5, and after knight h4, g takes h4, you know, this g file gets open, and then this king is extremely weak in this position. We have ideas with queen d1, sending this queen to the action as well. So this is very hopeless for black. So that's why after b takes c3, black tried to create counterplay with the move c4. White closes with d4. We have to say that if we take on c4 after queen takes c4, black, you know, has a lot of counterplay. So that's why d4 in this position. Now black takes on d4. Basically, black is forced to take on d4. Otherwise, d takes c5 is just winning. And now you're not gonna believe what is the best move here for white in this position. I mean, we all would say like c takes d4. If we are playing in a blitz game, we all take on d4 and then see what happens, right? The best move is knight h4, which is completely crazy, and you're not gonna believe white's idea in this position. After d3, queen d1, let's say knight c5, white's idea is to go rook f5 in this position, aiming to go rook h5 and then rook h7. It's true that black can take on f5, but after knight f5, black is completely lost. If you take on g6, there is a fork on e7. If you go to h8, so many move wins. But I like this one, you know, feeling like a sir, yeah, with my monocle. Aiming to go rook h1 in the next move and just winning the game. So instead, Elizabeth went for c takes d4, a more natural move. Now knight takes d4, knight takes d4, rook takes e4, and here we have to open the position up again. That's why e5 was played. I mean, this position is a mess. The engine says it's completely equal, 0.00, you know, but to the human eye, anything can happen, right? So here, black closes the position with f5. Of course, black can take on e5 because of the rook on f8, so f5. So white takes on f5, and here, Harry Beltik didn't play the best move in the position. He went for queen d5, which is fine as well. But here, knight f5 was guaranteeing here like an equal position again. Rook takes f5, queen d5 now, which is a very tough move to spot, because now this rook is hanging, but actually you are doing some sort of indirect defense, right? So instead of defending, you just create some counterattack. The counterattack is based on this rook d2 check, just winning the queen. So after rook f8, rook d2, takes, and king h3, the engine says like these positions are around equal. Instead, queen d5 from Harry Beltik, and now a fantastic move from Elizabeth Harmon, which is bishop e6, attacking the queen, attacking the rook. Now if you go rook f2, you basically take with the queen, and now, again, this queen has so many tasks. Cannot take on e6 because of the queen takes d4, and also probably rook queen f8 is just winning. So this is why after bishop e6, black has to go rook h8 in this position. Of course, hoping that Elizabeth goes king g1 and then black mates on h1. But instead, white has to play bishop h3, covering the king, and now there is the decisive mistake from Harry Beltik. The best move was rook d3, and according to the engines, this position is around equal. It's very important to cut the action from that queen, and we'll try to explain you why in a second. Now after rook f7, king g8, white cannot waste another tempo by taking on e7 because the threat's still there. Rook d2 check, just winning the queen. And now, for example, after rook f8, king g7, rook f7, king g6, rook h8, king f7, the position is around equal again according to the engines. It's crazy position, so basically everything can happen here, right? Okay, but instead, Harry Beltik played knight g6, which looks like a very decent move, because after rook f7, this is what Elizabeth played, it looks like king h6, it's a really strong move. And we have to say that queen f7 doesn't work because of rook takes, queen f5, the king has to go to g7 to protect the knight, queen f6, the king has to go to h6, and now bishop f5, and then threatening checkmate on g6, rook g8 only move on e6, and this is completely winning for white. You can play with the board, you can play with your engine at home, but you would see that this is actually completely winning for white. But I mean, when I was analyzing this game, I just thought, okay, king h6 looks like very good for black. There are no more checks. After queen c1, there is rook d2, check. And, you know, you go rook f6, again, rook d2, just winning the queen. But Harry Beltik didn't spot the fantastic move from Elizabeth Harmon. Boom! Ra-ta-ta-ta-ta! Queen g6, sacrificing the queen in order to checkmate. Is it checkmate? Yes, it is. How? Let's find out. King takes, rook f6, king g5, rook f5, king g6, rook f6. And now it doesn't matter where this king goes, to h7 or g7, h7, rook h5, king g7, rook g5. Now you see the importance of this guy on e5 protecting the rook on f6. And now after king h7, just bishop f5 with the checkmate. Fantastic and beautiful game between Elizabeth Harmon and Harry Beltik. And actually this corresponds to a game between Neshmetinov and Henrik Kasparian from 1955. I recommend you to follow, to take a look on Neshmetinov games. For example, there's one between Polugaevsky and Neshmetinov. It's one of my favorite chess games. And it's queen sacrifice, and the king, you know, it's the king runs from g1 to a6, and then it's being checkmated. You know, it's a fantastic game. So hope you guys enjoyed this game and this video. This is the second episode, so we'll have more games that appeared in this show, in this series. So it's been a pleasure analyzing this game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and just send you big hugs from Spain. Just stay healthy and take care. Bye bye. Bye bye.